o'clock, so let's call the meeting to order. Would you like to give us an invitation?
I will. Let's pray. Father, we thank you as always for this opportunity to meet here today. We ask for your blessings on this agenda and pray that all our decisions are mindful of the resources we have available to us. Please please guide us in our efforts to best serve our customers in the city of Hannibal. Father, we're also thankful for all the Board of Public Work employees that worked tirelessly during the flood to protect the city's vital infrastructure. And we pray for all those communities affected by the floodwaters. We ask these things in your name, amen.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Looks great. Good day. All right. So next up, consent agenda, minutes, payrolls, and claims. Do I hear a motion? Accept.
I will make a motion to accept.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And comments from the audience. We have one person
Just
signed up.
Just wanted to, thank all that were downtown for the flood efforts. I know there were some long hours down there, and so the downtown merchants appreciate, as well as the city, everybody's efforts. And then also on Saturday morning, we had some storms roll through, and we had a lightning that was, no more. You could hear it crack, and then the thunder, came about and lost power instantly. And I was in the I found out the 500 and 600 block of Magnolia was without power. I called just as soon as power went off, greeted by a real nice gentleman, and took my name and number, and about an hour later the power came back on, and he called back to follow up just to make sure everything was okay. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thanks for noticing.
All right, anybody else? Sign up? Okay. Proceed to the regular reports. General Manager and Operations.
I had a bunch of stuff to make up for the short report last month. Like Mike mentioned, we spent a lot of time on flood prevention this month. Not only did we have some utility assets to protect, following our normal flood prevention plan, but we also extended the concrete and gate portions of the downtown flood wall. Took us about four total days to do so, and quite a bit of manpower. The existing flood wall is designed to hold back a 32-foot river at its lowest point. We extended an additional 2 foot, so essentially for a 34-foot river. We did a similar thing in 2008. Like I said, it takes 3 or 4 days to do that work, so the decision to extend the wall has to be done well in advance. The decision was made like on a Wednesday at about 11 a.m. and we were done Saturday evening at 5 o'clock. And that was basically working on that till dark every night. So I know it was probably a overkill with extending the wall when the river didn't get up that high, but like I said, the decision has to be made early. And emergency coordinator Hart, we trust his judgment, and he says go. That's what we do. It's like Mike, I wanted to thank all the employees, especially the supervisors. I know only a couple of them are here tonight because they're all out busy working. But they reprioritized their crews, with very, very little notice, managed to continue doing some regular utility work, as well as focused a lot of efforts down there. Matt Munslinger in particular, he recruited the assistance lineman Bruce Goodwin, who's kind of a carpentry extraordinaire. They're kind of the brains behind the operation, so I appreciate both their efforts. They were our design engineers, if you will. We did get a lot of social media traffic during the extension, a lot of positive feedback on the stuff that Carrie's putting videos out there and stuff. So we appreciate everybody noticing the efforts and thanking us for that. We also purchased two 40-foot trailers, to store materials in. The materials from last time were actually in a trailer from 2008, found at the Parks and Rec site, and in okay condition, depending on what type of material you wanted. The steel was not in okay condition, but some of the wood was. So we were gonna try to do a similar thing, instead of take it down and save it ourselves this time. That way we can take it down systematically, especially the stuff on top of the gates is really custom fit and it's marked appropriately and taken down by the same people that put it up. And I think we can salvage a lot of it and reuse it, and maybe in less than 3 or 4 days get something back on the wall in the future. I don't know if it'll last 20 years, but I mean, we got 10 years out of the last stuff and it was in decent shape.
So did you use some of that?
We used a little bit of the ball thread and bolts, but we had already had most new already on the way, so.
Right. Plus after that
And
length
we
of
ended up
time.
sending even some of the stuff we ordered back just because we over-ordered. I'd like to thank the vendors too, a lot of the local vendors that helped us out, and we Carrie put a blurb out on Facebook thanking a lot of them. I think we include them all. But Fastenal in particular sent a person to Quincy 2 different times just to go get washers that, you know, we needed like 1,600 of or something, and we ran out. 2 different times they went up there and ran, got us a box, and brought them right to the job site.
They're good about that.
Yeah, so our local vendors really, really help out during times like that. Any questions about that project? Probably have some cost totals for you maybe by next month. I don't have those just yet. We're still working on that, but.
Yeah, I do. I know it's not our responsibility, but do we have any idea how much it would cost to just permanently make the walls bigger?
Permanently extending the wall is a core issue. They don't let you.
Oh.
32 foot is our approved level, and same thing across the river. So
when
permanent extension doesn't happen.
we do the like mulligan add-on sort of,
Yeah.
do we ask them about it?
They approve that method and that 2 foot
Okay,
ahead of time.
Okay.
We're approved. There's drawings and previous history with doing that from '93 and 2008.
okay.
So that's an approved method. If we were gonna put steel or something else instead of the plywood, we would need to discuss it with them, and I'm not sure what would be allowed, what would be allowed just yet. They were down there every day.
Yeah.
Not everybody knew they were down there, but once you figured out what color t-shirts they were wearing,
You saw them?
they were there,
Yeah.
looking, inspecting the flood wall, making sure we didn't need anything, looking for seepage, all that stuff.
Okay. And then, I think it's 31, but remind me, how many feet is the pump house rated for?
Pump house might be 36 or 34. It's higher than the downtown flood wall, much higher.
Okay,
And the reason it was, I'm guessing on a lot of the stuff, the reason it was allowed to be extended at a higher level is it's only twice the size of its room.
Tiny.
yeah,
So it doesn't displace a lot of water.
okay.
It's
So
not-
that's a core thing too?
It probably might have got some approval by them, but that was it. They don't inspect it or do anything like that. Once we put it in, it's all ours.
Okay,
But it's much higher than the downtown flood wall.
okay. So if this frequency of flooding increases or stays the same even, and we start to feel nervous, we wouldn't need to go to the core to make?
Not on the pump house.
Okay.
No.
Will we be reimbursed for this
Good question.
activity that we do?
Probably not, but that question is still out there.
I mean, emergency was declared, right?
Yeah,
by the
emergency was
governor.
declared, and so did one in every county up and down the river.
Yeah.
There's been some discussion, but it kind of depends on how much total cost. You know, frankly, if levies fail, it helps the cause, but I'm gonna fail it here. So, don't know yet, but we track our costs like we're gonna be reimbursed, just in case. And most of the time, if FEMA gets involved, they don't reimburse you for regular work hours, but they'll reimburse you for overtime and material charges, and like your overtime vehicle and equipment charges. So it's something.
Pump house is 35 foot.
35.
Thank you.
Next item I got is we received that plaque over there behind James this month from APBA. It's an Excellence in Reliability plaque. Basically, they give this award to all municipal utilities that participate in their e-reliability program to track outages and restoration times. We've been using that program for a handful of years now, and we can benchmark ourselves against other municipal utilities across the nation. But of course, we look at the data every month. You guys see it in the report, and we spend a lot of time on capital projects and internal communications to improve that stuff. So I just want to make you aware that we got that award. Also, almost everybody in the company, supervisors, business office, administrative staff, SCADA participated in our third version of customer service training this month by the outside training source. This will be our last, it was our last version during this calendar year, or 2 calendar years, whatever it was, has been. The training focused on phone interactions mostly, the ones that Mike was talking about, with the SCADA guy. So that guy obviously paid attention during the training. We got these nice little cards, and we got the supervisor for the business office that works right in our aide, Emily, and the SCADA supervisor from our kicker center doing call coaching with the people that answer the phones pretty often. They're listening to the recordings and making sure that they gave their name and they asked the customer this and that and they were friendly. All the things that we were trained on. Measuring the progress. We have gotten better. Appreciates everyone's efforts in that arena, and we're going to continue to look for ways to improve in that area. When we get the call recording thing on our new phone system, we're going to be recording all calls. So instead of getting the ones that I decide to send to my supervisor, we're going to get all of them. So even the ones that where Matt is answering the phone, we'll be able to hear and that kind of stuff. So all of us will be able to do better.
So, how did that kick in? Does that mean every single phone call is being recorded? Like within BPW?
Yeah.
Whoa, that's a lot of data.
Yeah.
How long will they be kept for?
Not sure yet. They're giving us options. It might only be 30 days or something like that. The police department does this already, so it's not unheard of. We had the option back in our last phone upgrade and chose not to. Our option right now is you can hit record while you're on the phone.
I gotcha.
So you can decide whether to record or not and save recording. You can save them elsewhere. You don't have to save them on the phone system, on the server. You can save them on the cloud or somewhere else. You don't take up too much data. Hopefully in the month of June, we will be done with that. And our call coaching will be a lot more efficient and we'll get a lot more data to work from. But it is nice to know that we're getting better at that. We had some positive feedback, quite a bit of positive feedback from our recordings of board meetings and other videos that Carrie posted on our YouTube page, the Stormwater meetings and stuff. The one negative is the sound. And apparently I'm not the only mumbler in the room. So Matthew and Carrie are looking at options to improve the sound of our recordings. Because she has that little camera that was a freebie that Matt already had, and it's got a microphone like the size of this pen. So it may take a couple months to get something installed that we can afford, but they're looking at that. Just be patient. It probably won't be by the June board meeting, but maybe by the next.
Keith, would you be looking at doing something like down at council where you'd have microphones up there and then one up here for, speakers from the audience?
I think possibly it's Carrie and Matthew are doing it, so whatever they find. We probably won't have to give one to James because he talks loud enough. But.
Yeah, something similar to council,
Okay.
where each member of the table will have a microphone in front of them and maybe some speakers out over the audience.
We've seen some other conference rooms that have different versions. General Mills has a little different version. They have a lot of video conferencing via Skype or whatever, and they got just microphones hanging from the ceiling. And there's some
What would
stuff in
be
churches.
super is if you could get something that would Bluetooth and you wouldn't have to mess with all the wires.
Yes, yep.
There's a gamut of options from
Sure.
very, very cheap to very, very
Depends
expensive.
on what you want to spend.
We don't wanna spend a lot.
Also, I wanted to point out.
Cannon string.
One thing I'm afraid of is we have a little bit of interest in the meetings for some reason, and we'll lose interest if they can't hear. So we want to get the volume thing worked out quickly or we'll lose our luster. Gary Tate, a guy that works in the sewer crew, has earned his 20-year pin this month. And the interesting part of that is he is also retiring June the 21st at 2
That's
p.m.
what his party is. I
That's
think
his party.
His retirement date's a little before that.
So I want to make sure to invite you guys, June the 21st, 2 p.m. in the back, will be Gary's retirement. He put in some years on the street department prior to working here at the DPW. So I don't know how many total years he has in, but enough to retire. So
What's his party?
June the 21st at 2 p.m. And he's a big boating guy, so that is the theme for the party. So you're welcome to wear your swim trunks.
Might not be asked to come back.
The spring cleanup was held on April 27th on a cold, rainy Saturday, co-sponsored by Parks and Rec, the Chamber, and us. Despite the kind of subpar weather and the only rain of the day was during the cleanup. 73 volunteers collected 1,500 pounds of trash, so pretty successful event. And it was very active on social media, mostly because of the 3 organizations all pushing it out there. So I think that's something we'll probably continue to participate with them each spring.
Do we split costs evenly on that?
We basically pay for it, since it's actually part of our stormwater management plan to host 2 cleanups a year, one in the spring and one in the fall.
Okay.
Basically comes out of stormwater budget.
Okay. For one 40-yard dumpster or?
It was 20 yard.
Oh, okay.
And I actually work with different organizations to donate like food and coffee, so we didn't really have that expense. And then we get our bags and gloves from Missouri Stream Team.
Okay.
So really our only expense was the dumpster itself. So.
Oh, okay, cool.
And we don't exactly have a schedule for it because the river isn't cooperating, but Andrea is trying to schedule something with the help of Mary Lynn on some sort of, I don't know if it's Bear Creek or some sort of cleanup. If you've noticed as the water's going down, there's lots of debris in certain places.
There's lots of little trash nest.
So we're trying to
along
organize
Bear Creek.
some sort
It's
of
crazy.
Saturday or Wednesday evening cleanup or something. Even after the Proposition S didn't pass, we've continued to get customers calling in with stormwater issues. It seems like that kind of spurned it on a little bit, and the city is experiencing similar calls with questions on, can you maintain this, or will you maintain this, or I have a problem here. Most of them are open ditch related issues that you can see. So later in the agenda, Matt has a stormwater maintenance policy to present and discuss that the department, city department heads have looked at and are in favor of. That way we can give customers a consistent message from across the board. Assuming you guys approve or modify and approve, then it's going to city council tomorrow night for their blessing as well. That will be our policy until we come up with something better. It's kind of short and sweet. In the electric department, the contractor for the Parks and Rec Lighthouse project is done with the structural work. We are waiting on our boring contractor to show up, which he did not today. Should be in town this week to start the underground conduit installation. The materials for the light portion of the lighthouse won't be here until mid-June. We're really pushing to get done by Tom Sawyer days, but things aren't falling just right just yet, but hopefully so. Also, electric guys, in between rain days, have been working at the Oak Spring subdivision. That's the one off of Westover that Mr. Mullen is constructing. They started installing underground utilities, the electric in particular, in the last few days. The other new pro subdivision, the Minnow Creek, the one that the Balls own, they're in the process of getting that subdivision replatted. They're making lots smaller and adding more total lots. It's kind of the gist of it, so sometime in this, they haven't done any construction, so there's no materials or anything like that just yet. Sewer department, as you can imagine, had some SSOs during the month. One was along the force main along Clear Creek Lift Station, which was along Highway 168. We had a couple related to river. We also unfortunately had to open the downtown constructed SSO on the 2nd of May, when the river was at 27 feet. Technically, this is a April report, but I wanted to make sure I got that before next month came around. Matt did notify DNR as required, so they're well aware, and we don't expect any sort of violation or any sort of fine or anything from that. It's just a procedural thing. We had a, 15-year agreement that we're 5 or 10 years in now to remove the SSO, but between now and then we have a procedure for if we have to open it, how to notify them and so on.
You see what was causing this time? Is it just leakage around those gates or?
Part of it is some of the manholes and stuff that we have out in the floodplain we haven't been able to get into to make sure they're sealed up as tight as they could be. Part of it is like down along Warren Barrett Drive, the Armory, stuff like that. Anywhere that had a floor drain that is now flooded, it's a direct conduit. So I'm working with Jeff with Trek to come up with a solution that maybe once the river gets up to a certain elevation, we have a valve we close or something of that nature to prevent that water from coming in.
Yeah, it seems like with Trek's help in the last few years, we've been able to do better at like 18 to 21 feet, but when it gets above there, it's maxed out again. So.
But at the end of this 15-year period, they're not gonna care what the river is if you open that thing up.
No, they're not.
You're gonna get a fine, so. But you're making these
We're making
observations and incremental progress, and I mean,
And we're planning on maybe later this summer to have a meeting with DNR and saying, okay, you know, at what point is enough enough? You know, if we had a 32-foot river or something like that, do we have to maintain that being closed? I mean,
And
so.
Trek was here during some of the flood wall extension, checking on their stuff. I mean, as you can imagine, they had some stuff down there and got inundated with flood water. Having the opportunity to monitor as it goes down will be an advantage, so that this event will help them some. At the wastewater plant, plant flow continues to be well above normal. I can't remember when it was twice normal or 2.5 times normal for the month. Over 200 million gallons, so it's pretty excessive. But during the last month, they've had a more consistent wasting and visual rounds, which was something we were having an issue with before. So even with the extremely high flows coming into the plant, digester temperatures have returned to normal. Within about 2 weeks of our last meeting, digester temperatures returned to about 130 degrees when they were like 98 degrees. Our normal is 120 to 140, so we're in the normal range pretty quickly just by wasting and doing some other things that weren't happening. A lot of the efficiency indicators of the plant are looking better. The one thing we're having an issue with is the 85% removal rate when you compare the influent, BOD, and suspended solids with the effluent. And that's pretty typical when we have high flows like this because it gets really diluted and our influent, BOD, and suspended solids are low. So we're ending up with the same result coming out of the effluent end, but we have such a low number coming on the influent, we can't meet the 85% removal rate, which is common. So we'll likely note that on our discharge monitoring report this month. And again, I don't expect to get any sort of violation for that, if it technically is. Also, the visual cleanliness of the plant is improving. Appreciate Jeff Williams. You guys remember him, he's the pre-treatment coordinator, and now the guy making day-to-day decisions at the wastewater plant. Appreciate his leadership and the cooperation of the plant operators on a quick turnaround, and I believe it should continue. Unless there's questions, that concludes my report.
anybody? No? All right, thank you. Next up, financial report.
Be much briefer. No.
No, don't do it long.
Might be the
the longest general manager report I've ever seen. Anyway, moving along. First page of the packet, as always, is the balance sheet. Restricted cash and long-term debt both increased by approximately $10 million. From last. Well, it's good news and bad news. The bond sale was, of course, as we talked about last month, bond sale was a success, and so the money arrived in our checking account. So that $10 million increase reflects the bond sale and the water fund. Total assets are up about 9.5% from last month, and about 13% from a year ago. As we'll see that play out as restricted cash will go down every month or so as we, of course, build a new facility and make a transfer from the bond proceeds fund to the general fund. So that's the accounting nerdiness behind that. Next page is April compared to budget. April company-wide net income is about $157,000, about 56% less than budgeted, driven by unfavorable budget variances and electric fund revenues and purchase power costs, as well as water fund professional services and interest expenses related to the sale of the water bonds, more than offsetting favorable budget variances and water and sewer fund revenues. Get my O's and U's straightened out there. The next page is April compared to last year. April company-wide net income is about $267,000, or about 68% less than the same month last year, due to the same factors just mentioned in the budget to actual comparison. The next page is fiscal year date compared to budget. Of course, we're 10 months into the fiscal year, and company-wide net income is about 14% below budget. This is being driven entirely by the electric fund, as the water and sewer funds net income is about 29% more than budget in total. The electric fund's results reflect unfavorable budget variances in operating revenues and power supply costs. Electric revenues are within about 1.4% of budget, and power supply costs are within 3.6% of budget, which seem like small variances, but in total they're causing nearly $800,000 of unfavorable variance in net income. The next page is fiscal year to date compared to last year. Company-wide net income is about 25% less than the same time period last year, due to the factors just discussed in the year-to-date comparison to budget, combined with the significant storm relief efforts performed last fiscal year that did not occur this year. This is causing the operating expenses in the electric fund to be several $100,000 higher this year compared to last year. Results in the water and sewer funds are significantly improved from last year. They are driven by increases in operating revenues. Overall, in my opinion, the financial results are acceptable. The main factor causing our unfavorable net income to budget results are the MISO marketplace prices, which are almost entirely out of our control. We've hedged ourselves and taken all the planning and preventive measures we can there, and the rest of it just kind of comes out where it's going to be. The next page is our cash targets. Cash reserves are steady. Our cash reserve consultants should have their results to us in time for the next board meeting, which should be later this week, so not quite in time for this one. We'll have something to us. Next page is a dashboard, some numbers in the pictures. I'm generally happy, I continue to be generally happy with the overall direction of our cash reserves. Company-wide net income as a percentage of budget and unit sales compared to their 5-year averages. That's the book. Oh, and Stephen, to answer your question from last month, average temperatures in April were 1.67 degrees higher than historical averages.
Good to know. I was burning.
Inquiring minds.
Glad you're on the job, dude.
I'm trying. You have any questions or comments? What are we talking about?
Thank you.
All right, next projects report.
The first water system project that we've been working on since 2012, we still have not closed that out. We're waiting on DNR to finalize the review. I got a call from the lady doing the review on our water plant the other day, asking questions about how something was installed. So once she signs off on it, we'll be able to complete the final paperwork to close that project out, hopefully in the next month. Contractor's been working up at the water treatment plant on the GAC project quite a bit this last month. They were able to get their excavation plan sealed by an engineer and approved by our engineer. There's a couple photos here on the table showing the drilling rig, drilling in the piling that is necessary for the shoring. Again, they're excavating approximately 27 feet deep, so there's quite a bit of shoring required to prevent settling of our building or our basins because of the close proximity. Since these pictures have been taken, the contractor has completed their piling installation, and their excavation contractor is approximately 10 feet deep right now. They were up there working today trying to get material removed. By some chance, if the weather holds off tomorrow, they'll go ahead and they install the first 5-foot layer of shotcrete against the wall in between the piling that was previously installed. They got to take it down in 5-foot layers, install the shotcrete, and proceed with the excavation. So,
They get in the rock there.
some of the piling they did. The piling they were drilling 40 feet deep. They would get into some boulders down around 30 feet, and then there was a couple of the holes that they drilled that the last 4 to 5 feet was solid rock. So.
But most of this stuff they dig out is just clay.
Yeah, they're gonna be, again, up to about 30 feet deep, so we're hoping they don't run into any rock. They have received some of their steel reinforcing on site. So once this is excavated, the rebar contractor, they got coming in to do the tying of all the rebar is ready to go. It'll be either next week or the following week when they start doing that. Pouring concrete shortly afterwards. I handed each one of you before the meeting a revised schedule. As mentioned before, this delay in getting the excavation started ate up some of their buffer time later in the schedule, but based upon this, they're still on track to meet the deadline of having the GAC facility up in operation sometime in February of next year. So. We are still doing the GAC pilot study. Black Beach is gaining some good data from that, and hopefully within the next month or so we'll go out to bid on some GAC material. At the same time, we've also got the Warren Barrett tank being repainted. There's a picture there on the table of the exterior of the tank. I don't believe that the tank had been repainted since it was built in the 80s.
90, I think, wasn't that?
Okay, late 80s, early 90s, it was painted. Contractor had to wait till the weather kind of warmed up so they could actually apply the paint. Now they're kind of fighting the rainy weather we're having. Humidity isn't allowing them to sandblast and get that bare metal covered up with the primer again quick enough before it tries to rust. So we're hoping to have the tank completely painted by 1st of June. We may have to extend that into June just because of the weather that isn't favorable. And we've been without this tank in service since about June or July of last year, so it's not critical that we get it back into operation. It's more critical that we get a good paint job on it. So
I was just curious, how many gallons?
half a million gallons.
Half a million?
Yep. They're also added a new access way through the wall. They installed a handrail and antenna mount on the top of it. They're also including mixing, a mixer as part of this project. So, as Heath kind of alluded to in downtown SSO project, we haven't been able to do much this past month other than gain information and try to come up with ideas of how we can find some of these problems after the river levels drop. Another thing we're looking at doing is smoking this section of sewer along Warren Barrett between Main Street and probably 6th or 7th. That's the part that was underwater. So trying to find some of those problems. There's also a section of sewer main that comes in off Colfax directly into Wilson Street lift station that wasn't previously smoked either. So we'll look at those areas and hopefully find something that we can reduce the flow coming in addition to maybe putting valves or something on some of these low-lying buildings. The ballpark is another one, you know, got the restrooms, anytime the river level gets above even the toilet, that's a direct access of water coming in, so. And then we're continuing to try to locate problems in the Surrey Hills project area. We did have one backup complaint. I can't remember which rain it was. Didn't cause a lot of issue. We've since went out and televised some of the downstream mains. We found a root in one of them that we're in the process of getting equipment in that recut that line. 18-inch diameter main, we didn't have an 18-inch cutter, so.
It's on St. Mary's, right?
This is actually back off of Beer Lane. It all drains over toward that waterway. It goes under KFC parking lot, so. That's all I've got, unless y'all have any more questions.
Thank you, buddy.
Thanks, Hey, congratulations on that employee of the month too.
Thank you.
Yeah. You mentioned that, didn't you?
No, I didn't. Probably because of the flood wall.
On to old business, power supply update.
Yeah,
So
I
you
got,
keep all the good news, is what you're doing.
yeah, quite a bit of information here. The peak energy blocks, you guys approved last board meeting for us to do the live pricing, for a live price not to exceed $35.50. We actually got our lowest bid, a week or so after the board meeting was $33.50. NextEra, the same company that we have a current contract with, for $38.65. So the current contract is $38.65 this summer, and then the next 3 years after that would be the $33.50 rate. Basically, it saves us about 120,000 gallons, $120,000, not gallons, per year on the current contract. That expires later this summer. So that was good news. Went very, very smooth. I mean, all we did was talk to NextEra, GDS on the phone after the bids. Then they piped us through straight to NextEra, and we had a little conversation about it. And sent us all the paperwork, we signed it.
Does that include transmission costs?
It is, I don't know.
It is not. It's straight energy only.
But this is the hedge
Yeah,
that
this
we
is-
buy, right?
these are our
That's
peak.
like 20% of what we use, or?
I couldn't tell you offhand, it'd be, I think in the teen percentages.
In the teens,
It's
okay.
June, July, August, and a little bit
Yeah.
in September. 16 at the peak hour, 16 hours a day, 5 days a week, in the summertime.
Yeah, basically it covers us.
15% reduction and 15% of use, you know, that's pretty good. So,
Covers us for the term, or for the times that are the most volatile historically
Yeah.
on the market.
Right.
So we have a guaranteed price for those times that's similar to what we purchase it for on the market right now. Capacity auction also occurred in late March, which we have already committed the appropriate amount of capacity for the next planning year that starts in June of this year. So we weren't purchasing any capacity, but we're still kind of keeping an eye on the market for any future decisions on capacity, or GPS keeps an eye on it for us. So the auction came in equivalent to about 12 cents per megawatt hour. This is the very same price that it came in last year, and continues the 3-year trend of essentially free capacity, very cheap capacity prices. So it's good if you're buying capacity, not good if you're selling. We weren't doing either, so it didn't really matter. Last item is a little bit longer. Drain belt project that we haven't heard much about for a couple of years. Clean Line Partners was the original owner of the grain belt transmission line, which, if you remember right, the grain belt line was proposed to bring high voltage, or proposed to bring wind power from Kansas all the way to Indiana and send it into the East Coast market. Well, on the way, Missouri Public Service Commission requested that they drop off some in Missouri. It's being proposed to be dropped off in the center of Missouri, in Ross County, about 500 megawatts. NPUA has purchased the rights, purchase is the right word, but has signed a contract for the rights for 200 of those megawatts right now. And they have about half of that already spoken for amongst their members, whether it's MOPEP or cities like us or independent power supply buyers. So I kind of wanted to give you an update on what's been going on that project and a rundown of what our commitments are. Recently, in the last few months, the Public Service Commission gave the project eminent domain rights. As you can imagine, that's pretty controversial among the property owners that is crossing or proposed to cross. And so the property owners are continuing to state their case at the state level with the state House of Representatives. They proposed House Bill 1062, and it made it through the State House, and the Senate voted it down last Friday. I would imagine there will be other proposals, whether it's at the state level or federal or what. I know the property owners are continuing to state their case. So
Was that the bill Jim Hanson?
yes.
Yes, but to be totally fair, they haven't tried to use eminent domain yet. They haven't even started property purchase negotiations because the project isn't far enough along for that to be happening. So all of this banter is somewhat noise at this point.
What I learned, and Abe has went down to a couple of hearings, so I appreciate him going down when I could not go, and Stefan went with me once down there to listen. What I learned is the Public Service Commission deemed the Greenbelt project a public utility, very similar to what they had deemed Ameren in the past and given them eminent domain rights, which I did not even know until I was down there they'd given Ameren those rights. So they're comparing it to Ameren building a transmission line across Missouri. They're saying it's the similar thing, so that's why the Public Service Commission gave them those rights. Obviously, the property owners are disputing that. Here's what our commitments are on the project. We agreed, or the previous board agreed to a contract with Mudmug, which is just a subsidiary of UA, in 2017 to participate in the project with 15 megawatts of nameplate wind generation and related transmission. I mentioned Mudmug has the rights to 200 megawatts of power for the project, and a little over half is committed at this time. Mudmug has a purchase power agreement with a wind farm in Kansas starting at $16.50 per megawatt hour and increasing 2% per year. Agreements for 20 years with an option for 5 additional years. $16.50 is the key number there. Mudmug also has a transmission agreement with Invenergy now, which bought out Clean Line, for transmission services along the Greenbelt Express line starting at about $3.50 per megawatt hour, $3.50 per megawatt hour. Also increasing at 2% per year, also for 20 years with an option for 5 additional years at the same term. So if the line gets constructed and delivers power to Missouri, our all-in cost will start at $20 per megawatt hour and increase 2% per year for at least 20 years. If it doesn't get constructed, we don't have any cost in the project. So $20 a megawatt hour compared to our all-in is
Low 30s, it's about a third cheaper.
On the open
60.
market.
Our all-in is like, our
Well,
all-in,
Our blended all in the Prairie State and everything else would be in the low to mid 60s.
yeah.
Current marketplace,
So
all
it
in
would
would be in the low to mid 30s.
by far be the cheapest power we'd be purchasing today. And assuming the project moves forward, you're still talking 2, 3, 4 years before complete. So I put in some things in here. Our all-in cost at year 20 would still be under 30, it'd be $29.14 per megawatt hour.
So roughly the average over the lifespan would be $24, $25.
$25.62 would be the average over the 25 years. There would be some capacity credit as well, but the amount and value are unknown at this time. Probably not if we got 15 megawatts, they're not gonna give us 15 megawatt capacity credit, maybe half. So our all-in price for power the last 18 months was approximately $60 per megawatt hour, so that's kind of comparing the two. Would be about 25% of our electric load.
Abe,
So pretty significant for
you
us.
think that 25% is the right amount to both recognize the advantages of the price, but hedge us against over-dipping?
Yeah, it wasn't by accident that we came up with the 15 megawatts. That was based on analysis by GDS a few years ago, based on the actual engineer's estimates of the power delivered by the wind farm. You're looking at this, wind's a funny thing where winter nights is the most productive time for wind, so we did not want to be in an overcommitted or speculative type position. There will be some hours of the year where we're selling that power at a loss, those winter nights, but, yeah, I think the 15 megawatt, 25% that he's talking about conservatively fits our current load of our city.
Cool.
It's not over or under, it optimizes the price point this power is at without exposing us to speculative market risk.
Cool.
There is the opportunity, because like I said, Mudgmuck has the rights to 200 megawatts of it, and they've only designated about half of that. There's the opportunity to get more if so desired, or if the project continues. Nobody has signed up since 2017, so that opportunity will still be there.
Now, this will replace our summer block purchases then?
Oh, I don't think it would do that. It's going to displace most of market purchases.
Okay.
The, wind unfortunately produces the worst on hot summer afternoons. And just the thermodynamics of wind. I've seen twist turbines, that's all I know about wind. And what GDS has told me. But it is not a good effective hedge against our summer peak hours.
So as far as total savings, Abe is very conservatively estimating that it will save us approximately $750,000 per year when we compare it to this year's MISO market costs and related transmission. It would represent 25% of our total load, so we would have 25% of our total power needs would be renewable, which currently we have no renewable sources in our portfolio. So the economics and
No requirements for them either, though.
No requirements.
Yes, okay.
So the economics and the possibility of having a large portion of our portfolio coming from renewable sources make the project appealing to us. Construction does not occur, you may look for other renewable sources of energy and almost certainly pay more for them or get less or a combination of both. There is some wind power available in Missouri, but significantly higher prices than the Grain Belt. And the reason being is the operating factor is much lower. Instead of being 50, 51, 52%, it's more like the low 20s as far as operating capacity. The wind just doesn't blow as much.
Right.
So it's not as efficient. Any questions about that? No real approvals or anything, just been a while since you guys have heard about it, so.
Sounds good. Interesting to see how it plays out and how soon it comes to fruition.
Next item on the agenda is called a master purchase power and sale agreement. And what this is we participated in the live pricing for the peak blocks to hedge ourselves against the more volatile times in the purchase power market. In the past, we've also taken bids on capacity to hedge ourselves against volatility of that yearly auction as well. So this purchase power agreement is with a company called TransAlta, which is a new bidder in that market, or new bidder to us. And our consultant GDS recommended that we enter into a master purchase power and sale agreement with TransAlta and I think 2 other companies that were interested in bidding just to give us more bidders for things. The other 2 companies and then hit kind of a stalemate. They've been working on this since November. TransAlta and then were able to reach an agreeable agreement. We also had a law firm by the name of Fiscal working on the lawyer portions of this contract, which almost all of it is that. The board about 2 years ago, I believe, approved 3, maybe 4 of these with other companies that we are continuing to get bids from. So this is just kind of an item for the future. If you guys approve it, then we will be able to take live pricing bids from this company for a while and be able to sign and approve those. And if you don't approve it, they won't be a bidder probably, or they won't be a bidder in live pricing. During the negotiations, they're also negotiating for the city of Kirkwood. They have a very almost identical agreement that they're proposing to approve. This one looks very similar to the ones 2 years ago, maybe 10 words different in the whole document. So.
Did you read this?
Yeah.
I didn't read it. I tried.
So I'm recommending the board approve this master purchase power and sale agreement with TransAlta as presented in the packet, so we can more efficiently receive and accept future power purchase bid prices from TransAlta. And I'm not sure if this requires the mayor's signature or not. I'm gonna have to look back and see if we did that previously, and if so, then it'll go on to council for their approval as well.
Okay, do I hear a motion to enter into this agreement?
I'll make a motion.
And a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Jim, I'm on page 31, I'm still going.
Oh, it does go about page 90. Yeah, it does.
Well, they sent about 4 of these in December, and we're like, take a look at these and let us know what you think. And I'm like, they look the same.
Yeah, I got it.
We've worked with Spiegel McDermott, and so do the other MPUA electric municipals for longer than I've been here, and trust their judgment on items like this. We met them at one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll take your word for it.
But we won't need their services for another 3 years, right?
I don't
Since we
believe
just
so.
bought.
It's kind of hit and miss. Anytime we need another, capacity contract or something like that, we use them.
Okay.
Life could change the next 3 years. We could see a new customer come to town that would make us want to add another layer
Oh,
of
yeah, true.
winter or summer
Something like
hedging
that
or
changes then.
capacity purchases. These things are just kind of boilerplate, made so we are ready to consummate a transaction with the new vendor.
Mudgemuck uses them quite often for purchase power stuff as well, so they come to EQA meetings all the time.
All right.
Cool.
You got it. And next up, final budget.
This is definitely old business. Possibly weren't my welcome with the budget this year, but since we had time, I wanted to ask the board for a final approval on the budget. We made discussed some verbal, audible changes last month. And the budget, of course, is a important document for our business, and I want to give you guys, since we have time, obviously, but budget doesn't kick in for several more weeks, give you guys a chance to get one final last look at kind of the net results as the budget's geared towards here. We discussed last month reallocating or not allocating that shared administrative expense to the stormwater fund. I kind of did a accountant's video game here, the reconciliation of what the cash contribution fund by fund company-wide is now showing, what it was in the previous draft budget, the change fund by fund, and the drivers of those changes. Overall, the results improved by the $97,000. And I don't think I expressed myself last month on changing the interest expense on the water bonds to be their actual interest expense, and that's kind of a common sense, no-brainer kind of thing. But I didn't say that. I kind of celebrated the metal happy dance for how the rates came in, but I wanted to kind of give you guys a chance to see how that actually should, what that looks like on the budget, that $97,000 projected savings there. That's the only things that changed. So not allocating administrative expense to stormwater and adjusting the water bond interest expense to its actual amount. I apologize if this is tedious. Like I said, important document. Just want to give you guys to see the actual final numbers in black and white on paper or on pixels before we go into the new fiscal year. You all have any questions or thoughts? Like I said, we're just trying to be abundantly cautious or transparent on this whole process, and you've been to two drafts and a budget workshop, and I wanted to be clear.
I'm good with it, and I appreciate the caution aid, or, I don't know, caution's the right word, as much as
Well,
We were a little worried about the word.
transparency.
Last month left out a couple of words that
yeah, I
I
should
want
have
to make
said,
sure we're covered.
yeah, I want to make sure we're clear. Yeah, cautious price is the right word, clear, and
Yeah.
You're asking for the budget to be reapproved, then, right?
yes,
With the changes,
yeah, to reflect
although
it.
they were changed already.
Well, the water bond and interest expense, I don't think I mentioned that one specifically. We talked about the new, how we're gonna save, $90,000 and that. I don't think I actually said,
When the motion was made, the stormwater allocation was part of the vote.
Right.
The interest part was not on the water line.
Okay.
so we're just trying to make that abundantly clear.
And while we're talking stormwater, then, at what point will we be out of money in that fund without?
Depends how fast we perform work or what kind of emergencies happen, or what kind
Okay.
of, I'd estimate sometime late summer,
This summer?
this summer.
Yeah.
Stormwater has a cash balance of a little over $200,000, and with the budgeted cash contribution of negative, $569, it's gonna, those two numbers don't match up very well.
No. And when will we be deciding on the way forward for that
It's
next month?
That's probably outside of my,
Possibly.
above my,
I mean, last month we kind of just threw 50 ideas at you, and we're still gathering feedback. We haven't gotten much since that last meeting, but we're gathering feedback, and eventually we'll have some sort of proposal. We may talk between meetings to get some sort of consensus on what you favor and what you don't.
Okay. All right, so we need a motion to approve the
the fiscal year 2020
fiscal
budget
year
is presented.
1920 budget. Do I hear a motion?
I will make a motion to approve fiscal year 1920 budget.
I'll second
All those in favor?
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Dave, you're still up, man.
I did again, I left my papers, I need back.
Oh.
New business, red line, rate
Hey,
sheets,
there we go. 2 months in a row, I stepped away from the 2 days.
schedule of fees, charges.
Well, the budget, of course, included some assumptions and projections about rates and rate classifications. We'll walk down memory lane. We proposed redefining the large industrial class to basically be a criteria of a 1 megawatt peak demand instead of 4 megawatt. That's the only rate change in the electric fund. Sewer fund had no rate changes. The water fund is a bit more complex there. Of course, we have a rate track of a 3.5% increase in July, and then the special increase in January is part of our 5-year plan there to keep the water fund financially sound during its process of constructing the GAC facility, losing a major customer, et cetera. So we have here red line rate sheets for each of the funds. Electric, of course, has a wording change. Water fund has a rate change. Sewer fund has a very slight wording change based on the last page to take out some no longer relevant verbiage related to the 2013 water bond. Schedule fees and charges has very small changes, basically just kind of taking out some no longer relevant fees. I did try to show for the water fund, of course, that being the ones changing the most, the proposed, and there's no action needed on these. These are what we present at the rate hearing next month. I just wanted to give you guys plenty of time to see them and ask questions or make any changes or anything. Gallon charges and meter charges by customer class, the percentage changes there, and also the dollar effect of these changes on the second page of this for our average residential 3,300 gallon a month customer, both for the July proposed changes and also our tentative January 2020 changes. About $1.43 a month for the increase in July, and about a little over $3 a month in January. That's all I wanted to do there. Kind of get these documents in front of you guys.
And this increase is 3.1%?
On the gallons,
Okay.
Total 3.5, 4 point, it's a little over 4% on the meter charge. You put those together, it's a 3.5% new revenue increase. Allocate 60% to the gallons, 40% to the fixed charges. That's kind of the ratio of our revenue put forward by the cost of service study consultants. I don't know if you
Yeah,
any
so if
comments or anything to.
you desire, you need to set the public hearing date, which is required for any rate adjustments. We have to have a public, it says all changes in rates, fees, or charges levied by the BPW shall be preceded by a public hearing no longer than 30 days and less than 15 days prior to the rate charge or fee change. So the regular June board meeting is June 17th at 5. If we do a public hearing starting at 5 and then the regular meeting to follow, the rates can be effective July 2nd to cover the 15 to 30 day range, which is no problem for the software. It's just a matter of saying it that way out loud.
Okay, so we need a motion to set a
Public hearing for
public hearing for
5 p.m.
Rick.
June 17th, the regular meeting to follow.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to set a public hearing at 5 p.m. on June 17th with a regular meeting follow.
That's good.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Thank you, Abe.
Thanks.
And
But you're planning on instituting that on July the 1st and 2nd, you said?
the second would be when the
second.
rates go into effect to cover us for the 15 to 30 days. Otherwise, we have to have a
Schedule
public hearing.
says July 1st, but
Yeah, I'll change that. I kind of redlined these before we did the exact
And
dates.
if you have any questions, even throughout the month on the red line stuff after you've studied it, by all means, email, call, whatever, and we'll explain that better, or there's no reason that we can't adjust something here that was
No, it's all
proposed.
It's all available for modification at this point. We just kind of want to show you guys what it's look like.
And you should have Parks and Rec no longer being charged for electric.
Yeah, that's shown there.
They're on the list now.
Yeah, right.
So that's one other
Typically,
change.
during the public hearing, we'll put it up on the board, or whoever's here to see the changes in red, that way they can ask questions.
You know, printed copies are available for attendees also, probably.
All right, very good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Abe.
that's it.
On to stormwater maintenance policy.
As Keith alluded to earlier, this past month we put together a policy that defined what was private storm sewer systems versus what would be under the responsibility of the city as a whole. The policy also explains, what the Board of Public Works versus the Department of Public Works or Street Department would be responsible for. This was presented at the city department meeting. We received no comments from them on it. So the plan would be seek your approval tonight. If you have any changes, we can do that before it's approved. And then it would be taken to the city council tomorrow night for approval as well.
Black and Beach also looked it
Yeah.
over, just to kind
So
of make sure.
my understanding is that this is somewhat of a placeholder while Black and Beach, while your next bullet point, while Black and Beach does the larger thing.
Part of it is that, part of it is we just want to be able to answer people's questions, whether or not the city is going to be responsible for something. When they call in with a problem, if we have a policy that's been approved and that we're all working from, we can say that this doesn't fall within the guidelines of our policy, this is your responsibility to remedy.
The idea with establishing a policy is going to be that you're going to be consistent in all situations. You're not going to have a situation where somebody goes, well, my neighbor, you did thus and so, but now you're telling me this, blah, blah, blah. If you got a policy in place, then all employees are going to know exactly what levels of responsibility everybody has. They're going to know who to refer people
We had
to.
that exact situation today.
Yeah, I mean, the lack of consistency in the past has been a problem, and it has to do with the fact that people will be like, well, 15 years ago, blah, blah, blah happened.
1964.
And, you know, and it's like, well, but, you know, staff has completely changed the board, you know, who knows, A, if the person's even telling the truth, B, if they are telling the truth, who approved that, why it happened, et cetera, et cetera. If you put the policy in place, then it's clear, and if something happens that doesn't go with the policy, you can at least say, somebody didn't follow the policy, and you have an answer to that.
So then we have people calling in, like you guys said earlier, with very specific problems. Is this policy intentionally vague to like umbrella that?
Well, it says the city retains the right to make emergency repairs. Right?
I think it, you know, I read it, and other than just a couple little grammatical things, I felt like it was in line what had been articulated to me in the past, what the policy was. When some things have come up, and it's
putting
just,
pen to paper
it's putting pen to paper
to
and
do what
just
we're already doing.
lining it out. I think, if you get overly specific, you know, in this situation, this happens, in this situation, this happens, you run the risk that you're gonna leave out something, you know, somebody say, well, the fact that you didn't put that specific situation in there means blah, 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 and it leaves it more subject to interpretation. Whereas if you do good general rules, I think it's gonna be more comprehensive, and it's gonna be better to cover all the situations. So I reviewed it. I think it's in line with what has been articulated to me in the past, both by the folks up at the city, at the Department of Public Works, and also at some prior meetings that I've sat in here, so.
I mean, it kind of essentially, correct me if I said it's wrong, any blue line on the map that's considered a water of the state, not our responsibility. Any underground stormwater conduits that are in city right of way or an easement, BPW is maintaining. Any above ground items, open ditches, that kind of stuff, that are not blue lines on the map, that are in city right of way or easements, Department of Public Works is maintaining. If it's not in those areas, we're not taking responsibility for it.
So then, I guess my larger question is why isn't the waters of the state language in here? Because I'm trying to read this as somebody who has a problem in their backyard instead of reading it as a board member. And if I was reading this as somebody who had a problem in my personal property, I'm not sure this would answer my question.
What areas?
If I had a ditch, for example,
So you want us to put the map that shows the blue lines on?
Some of them we
I-
want them to call like we had a situation.
This is more for us to use than for the citizens to use, it's in terms of this
And if
policy.
we
right?
call in, we would like to know, like, because a lot of these problems are new to us, like the one we went to today, we were very positive that this was not our responsibility, but we wanted to see what the guy's problems were. And we had 15 similar situations where an open ditch was wrapping around a house and it wasn't in an easement, and we just wanted to be aware and put it on our problem list.
Part of that is just documentation so that we can put it in front of you all that says, hey, we're getting these calls about this particular ditch or this particular problem. You know, in the future, we may be in a position that we want to tackle some of those problems or do, you know, a community or area-wide effort to address a problem or something like that. And if we don't have that documentation,
And the first step would be to get an easement, but you can't do anything if you don't have the easement, so.
That's the other thing that I liked about the policy as it was written, is it encourages us to say to people, look, you need to give us an easement if you're wanting this work to be done, because there is just so much exposure for going in and doing work on somebody's property when they haven't granted an easement. And it is not uncommon to have things that people are like, well, I know that's the city's, and you're like, well, there's no easement and there's no record of that. You know, we had one, and I won't name names or anything like that, where the people were just gonna sue the city, and we ended up having to settle with them. But one of the requirements was, you're gonna give us an easement, so that we know that in fact it is ours. So I mean, that was one of the things I thought was excellent about it, is it kicks it back on people to go, you need to talk to us about an easement. And it also puts them in a place where it encourages them, because some people will just get crazy about, no, I'm not giving you an easement, well, then we're not doing the work.
Now then, one more question and I'll shut up. Matt, do you think this, do you feel comfortable with how responsibilities are delineated between BPW and DPW on this?
It's what we've been working on in the past, I mean, to a degree, but it's also been something that, you know, when we were setting up the fee structure for our stormwater utility,
Yeah.
these were kind of the boundaries that were
Yeah, you need to know
defined
that.
as well.
Okay.
And that's how they calculated the proposed fee. So if we move responsibilities, the proposed
Right.
fee may change.
You
And
have
at
to
this
take care
point-
of all the grates all
Oh,
of a
yeah,
sudden, or something
no,
like that.
and I'm not trying to say we're trying to change responsibilities, I just want to make sure that you feel comfortable that they're clearly defined and, okay.
What are flood wall gates B and C?
Center and the one at the stormwater detention pond, or
It's-
stormwater pumping pond.
They're like stormwater sluice gates is what he's referring to.
That's why the DPW has those.
Yeah,
Somehow we got one of the stormwater gates, Gate A, which is at North Street, and then D, E, and F are all on Silver, so.
somehow it's because it was broke. You know,
Okay, so do we need to approve this policy then?
they like that unless you
Alright.
want some modification to it.
Everybody okay with the policy as written?
I'm okay with it,
Cool. All right, do I hear a motion to approve the maintenance responsibility of stormwater systems policy?
yeah. I'll make that motion.
And a
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next up, Black and Beach Stormwater Contract Amendment.
At the last board meeting, we discussed some of the options that we had moving forward with funding the stormwater utility. And we also discussed some of the comments that we had heard while we were doing the public outreach leading up to the election. Some of those comments centered around, you know, us not having fully developed policies, not having the credit or rebate programs. And so after last month's board meeting, I had a conversation with Pam and Prava of Black and Beach to discuss our options moving forward. Previously, we had kind of waited on development of a lot of these policies and procedures just to keep the cost down as we're not generating any revenue but spending quite a bit of money. They came back with this amendment to their contract. They would move forward with the development of the credits and fee appeals programs. You know, due to the administrative rules behind it, develop a process of how we would go about charging that with our workforce. Developing the manual for the credit and appeals process, and policies regarding billing, and also reach out and we would have some stakeholder meetings during this process to get buy-in from the public. This was drafted based upon going forward with trying to get on the ballot for this November's election. If you read down, I don't remember exactly which page it was, but they kind of laid out that I think they'd have everything completed October or mid part of October. That way we had plenty of time.
Is there anything else on the November ballot?
Not this moment, I don't think, but there's time for people to get it on the November ballot.
I think August sometimes is the deadline.
I just want to throw this out there that,
It's going to be a state election.
what, oh, really?
Well, maybe not.
Let me think.
Every 2 years. Is that what you do?
As far as state reps and stuff like that, yeah, not this year because it's
Okay.
19,
Yeah.
but there could be other stuff on for that election time.
I just want to say that I'm really wary of us being on a low turnout ballot. And I have a feeling that's kind of what this November would be.
You think the following April would be something on that, or?
That would be a presidential primary, so that would be a lot of turnout.
I mean, I tend to agree having a low turnout would probably not be
How much is it to be on a ballot?
It costs you more
20 grand, I think.
if there's, not very many items on the ballot, then it costs you more as
Yeah,
well.
we pay for it all.
As you share.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
And the only problem with that is now you've got another 6 months where you have no money to do anything. And you have no mandate to do anything. And if you want to keep doing even the things that we need to do, which is permitting, those kind of, related deals, you're gonna have to borrow more money. And I hate to see us do that, it looks like that's where we're headed, if we want to keep going down this path, so. So I don't know, if it's $20,000, go to the November ballot and take your chances, and then if that doesn't work, then you go to April, the Plan C. You want to make a more substantive change, but right now, we're gonna be making some sort of changes to adapt to what we heard as criticisms in this first election, right?
You think there's a point where you start losing even your yes votes because they're like, well, we're doing it again here.
I don't know, how, a lot of places, it takes 2 tries, right? Palmyra took 2 tries.
I understand the 2 tries, but I mean,
Yeah,
I think you're only
3,
gonna
4,
get-
and 5 times.
Yeah.
Flood wall, look at the flood wall.
Well, you keep doing it until you find something that the voters have an appetite for. I'm not saying put the same things out, and I don't wanna see us put the same proposition out in the same wording and not having addressed some of the criticisms. But if we do that, we were very close to begin with. And you all do your, what you did last time in terms of education, keep on that, which worked very well. I feel pretty good about, what the outcome might be, but.
Probably the question would be how well you can motivate voters to show up if it's a real low thing. Because to play devil's advocate, to go to the contrary position would be in a presidential primary, you potentially have voters that have absolutely no understanding or knowledge of the issues and may just flip a coin or vote by what they heard on TV or radio or blah, blah, blah. And to a certain extent, while your point's well taken, that, the lower vote turnout, you get more people that are likely to be there because they're motivated, they don't want it, but you also perhaps run the risk that you get a bunch of voters who've not taken the time to understand the situation. So to the extent that you can do better education and get a more educated voter there, the November election might be better, because then it'll be people that are voting yes or no that absolutely understand what they're voting for. So, just to play devil's advocate.
No, I get it.
Is that what we had in the first go-around here? Was that was
It's a pretty.
there weren't many things on the ballot then?
A few council
yeah,
seats.
You had a couple
yeah,
council
that's the
seats
mayor.
and mayor.
It's
Yeah,
a
the
pretty
school
high
board
voter
issue.
turnout. 3,000 some, wasn't it? Which is pretty.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm also concerned that if, that the social clubs and service clubs that welcomed us in might not welcome us in to do another presentation twice in 1 year. Whereas if we waited till April, we would get to do the whole election cycle again, and get to go to the candidates forum, et cetera. But that would be
We can
a
send
Carrie and
somebody
Andrew
else.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. James, you wanna go?
I can guarantee Rotary will be happy to let you in.
Okay.
They're always looking for speakers.
Well, at Rotary we are, and part of that's because, as I recall, I'm one of the people on that committee, and I'm not doing a very good job.
Well, this is a good thing to consider, and I think we have some time to make that decision, November versus April.
And even if you're not,
Then you could consider what you're gonna do if you have to wait till April to get more money.
even if you're not comfortable with this proposal, because we just got,
Well-
you can.
Yeah, let's get back to
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
On
sorry.
the proposal, They've got roughly
$77,000.
$117,000 left out of the
Right.
original contract.
Mhm.
We were able to save some money on the parcel information when we were looking at impervious versus not areas by using the two counties' GIS information. So there's $117,000 that's been approved for the original phase one of this process. They're proposing with this approval, using some of that money that was priorly approved.
But we haven't paid that to them.
We haven't
yet,
paid it.
So it's still coming off of whatever little bit that's left, so.
I
200,000
had
is left.
200 and whatever thousand
Yeah, you got 200,000.
left. Did that take out the whole Black and Beach contract?
That's the cash in the checking account.
Okay.
So we're gonna pay for this out
So
of that.
we would pay for this out of
further
that,
depletes
but.
that limited amount of money.
Mhm.
But it gets you farther along, and that's one of the criticisms was, well, what, now, the residential customer this is not gonna be for them, right? The appeals and
The appeals process
credits?
will be, the credit program, I mean, that's something we've got to determine, but more than likely not.
Okay,
Pretty much every,
okay, so the appeals will. so
The appeals
that's
will
good.
be, because if we say you have 10,000 square feet of
Gotcha.
impervious area and you,
Yeah.
hey, you only got 8,000, it outlines the process of which you can come to us and reduce your bill.
in almost every public education meeting we had, at least the ones I can remember, somebody asked the question about how will this affect businesses? And commented sometimes negatively about that, even though it was a
We went to a lot of
individual voter.
business clubs and stuff.
Yeah, it was an
Doing
individual
so that
voter
makes
making
sense.
those comments, but.
But businesses don't vote, but, you know, they have one person, the owner will vote, so.
But they were asking on
Yeah, the
behalf
more
of
we have
businesses.
everything fleshed out and made clear, I think, the better, so. The one thing I would look on this is, see $21,000 of it for the stakeholder engagement workshops. If I was gonna try to save money, I would try to maybe consider whether or not that was
Could you,
I think,
worth it.
I think it's gonna be worth it, because it's gonna, if you can bring the people in here on the ground level and educate them on, you know, why these decisions were made, and if you get the right people in here, they can go out and spread that information, and,
So that'll
Try to
include
pull-
residents too, or?
yeah, it
Primarily
would include
businesses.
people from across the community.
Okay.
so I have a question, and maybe you guys haven't gotten this far down the road about stakeholder meetings to follow up with Lenny. Is this something where it's gonna be people, you know, sitting around a table chatting, which is totally good and fine and awesome? Or is this gonna be something more to where we have, discussion points and we're gonna have a charrette leader, with breakouts and notes and all that sort of stuff?
We would have an agenda coming into the discussion at that time, and I can't remember exactly how many people they wanted to keep it down. They wanted to keep the group rather small, so that we could have good discussions amongst the group, and they would be taking notes, and that would be going back and being incorporated into the policy that was discussed, or the procedures, or whatnot at that time.
Okay.
Now, if we had,
I like that.
when do we have to have our ballot thing filed for
August.
November?
It's
So,
early
so we
August.
wouldn't be able to make any adjustments to what we put in terms of language based on the outcome of these stakeholder,
So the stakeholder meetings would have to be
Engagements.
in the next 8 weeks?
because they, you know, it's on the September 1st to October 15th. Now, that would work if you were doing an April ballot.
I think the stakeholder meetings would be more to talking to them about the appeals process and the stormwater credits program and stuff like that,
Yeah.
that aren't gonna be part of the
Okay,
ballot
so you're
language
not
specifically.
asking them
The
for
ordinance,
their input on
Yeah,
it.
the ordinance
You're just
language.
telling them what it's gonna be at that,
On the fee, we wouldn't be asking for their input on the fee. It would be
not
the input on
But
the
even on the
programs.
appeals process and all that.
Mhm. I mean,
You'll
we'd
have
be-
it, and this is what it's gonna be.
No, we'd be asking for their input.
the appeals process and the credit program won't be part of the ordinance though. It would just be general language with a specific fee or something like that, and if it said, you know,
Yeah,
this
like
dollar
we
figure
discussed last
maintains
time,
stormwater system.
we're gonna do $1.39 for 500 square feet of impervious area. Not to be changed for 5 years or 3 years or whatever. but after that time, be adjusted to reflect.
Yeah, so,
And
you know,
then
if we go
you
that
have the-
route and then have the appeals,
You have the meeting.
and that's part of the education process.
Yes, and then the month before, you start advertising that stuff. Here's our appeals process, here's the credit program, here's the things that you asked about 6 months ago. Or at least some of the things.
It, within the scope of this, Matt, is there anything that's gonna be left to do? Or is this gonna, they're gonna give us a report and we're pretty much gonna say, this is the entire verbiage of our utility?
You mean for Black and Beach stuff to do?
Oh, well, for us to do, to finish out.
This should
Flushing Out
pretty much, this will put us
At the finish
at the
line.
finish line,
Okay.
with the exception of what we had to do within our billing program to actually implement the change, or the process.
Okay.
Just fine.
Which is no small task, right?
I mean, it was 9
You're not
months.
currently billing people that don't have utilities.
It was not, but that's something that we're gonna have to develop as part of this policy development. It'll outline, or make a new utility bill for a new person, bill them once a quarter or
It's
whatever.
included in that 20.
Yeah, there we go.
Well, I hate to see us spend what little money there is, but this is putting us, you know, it's flushing things out and making things clear to the customers that this is how it's gonna be dealt with. You know, it answers some criticism that were made before, so. So, I guess we need to approve or disapprove of this change order request. Is that correct?
I mean, if we wanna go ahead, and if we wanna try to make a November ballot, we need to get them moving.
And even if we don't,
We'd still
It's
wanna
gonna be
get-
done at some point.
70,000 to 70,000 this month or 3 months from now, so. Any more questions, comments? Do I hear a motion to accept this change order request for the stormwater utility development study?
I will make a motion to accept the change order request for the stormwater utility development study.
I'll second
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Last time?
Oh, sorry, yes, uniform services bid.
Easiest item of the night. On April 15th, we opened bid for uniform services contract. Probably have one bidder. Proposed contract is to begin with the fiscal year of July of 2019, July 1st, and be renewal for 2 additional fiscal years. Aramark was the only bidder. They have the current contract, and we're satisfied with the services they're providing. Should be a big form.
So Clean didn't want to bid on this?
Apparently not.
Question,
Yep.
the document that you have in the package, is that the sole written agreement?
There's more, I just put the,
Are we using their form of agreement?
their form?
Yeah,
It's one that we had previously had.
but is it our form or is it their
It
form?
is our form.
Okay. The street department had an issue with Aramark regarding an interpretation of the contract, and the street department had entered into an agreement using Aramark's form, which was not really in line with the way city wanted to do things, so.
I think there's actually 2 more pages, I just put the one with the cost on there.
I'm fine with it, and specifically, the issue is this, you know, I'm not trying to beat them up, but the issue was that the contract had certain guaranteed levels of items that we would use, and the street department was not using those levels of guaranteed items.
Take one.
And so they didn't want to have to pay for them, and then there was a dispute in regard to that, et cetera, et cetera. So that would be my only concern. I think they It wasn't that there was a problem with what they were providing. The issue was in regard to the interpretation of the agreement and whether we had the right to decrease services or not. So that was my question.
We haven't had any issues like that with them. Beverly handles
Right.
the stuff.
And again, I'm not trying to beat them up or, say they were doing anything improper. I'm just saying there was a disagreement regarding that particular issue, so.
There's some cost increase, as you can imagine, over, it's covered 6 years, so. I think it's mostly related to the flame retardant items, which some of our electric and maintenance personnel are required to wear. So essentially, we recommend awarding the uniform services contract to Airmark beginning with the fiscal year 1920 and renewable for 2 additional fiscal years at our discretion.
Do I hear a motion to approve that bid? And a second?
I don't know who's our favorite.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Well, that wasn't as easy as you said. James made it.
I'm sorry, I made it difficult, as I frequently
It's
do.
still easy as anything.
That's right.
Well, here's
It was.
the, I didn't see, is there
Yes. Okay, comments from the city attorney?
I think I've probably commented enough
Is
today.
that cool?
Yeah.
And well done. General discussion.
No, sir.
What? They're gonna take
Think about
away,
taking that
they're
line
gonna take
off
away
the
your
agenda.
title as Little Bob if you don't start having general discussion.
Think about taking that off the agenda.
Yeah, that would be an
Discussion.
excellent idea.
Okay,
Only in
So-
specific discussion.
so now we move to closed session. Or a motion? Or do I read this first? In Bill's absence?
Yes.
Pursuant to section 610.021, 312 of the Missouri Sunshine Law, the meeting shall convene in closed session to discuss personnel and contracts, and that will
To
include.
include the board, myself, Courtney, Kate, and Matt.
Thanks, everyone.
Need a
a
second?
second.
and a vote.
I'll second it.
And all those in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.